Good morning. Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to the AI Files podcast. If you're looking to stay updated into 2025 on all things artificial intelligence, or if you're an enterprise employee trying to learn the perspectives of execution, ROI, benefits, strategy, and culture, or you're just a heavy Azure platform user looking to upgrade on your AI skills, then this is your ultimate destination. You can find us in Apple Podcasts as well as YouTube. We are not on TikTok, so it doesn't matter to us, whatever. I am Shadab
Time.
Hussain, your co-host of the show. I'm a director of data and AI at Microsoft with over 23 years of experience in the analytics and AI field.
And I am Jamie Basilico, and I'm still laughing at that last comment there. That was very timely in terms of what's going on in the news with TikTok. But anyway, back to the AI files. I'm one of the co-hosts here on AI Files. I'm a data and AI technical specialist and architect working in this industry and field for over 35 years in these AI and data related domains and have worked with many of the Fortune 500 companies throughout my career. Please note, as we always say, this is not an official Microsoft channel. The views and opinions expressed by the co hosts as well as our guests that we have on are our own and do not represent the views from Microsoft. With that said, I know we have a lot of great things to cover today and getting back into the swing of things as it relates to news in 2025 and new launches, new capabilities. You know, it never stops with AI. So you want to take us away with, I guess, the our typical quote of the week?
Yes, absolutely. And just going back to the TikTok comment, Jamie, I can tell you one thing that we old men probably don't care much, but my daughters are devastated.
Yeah.
They are like just scrambling and trying to see what else they're gonna do. They are sending me the request for this app, that app, alternate. They are just devastated and they're just hoping that some miracle happens. So I can understand. Good thing is, again, we are not too dependent on that part. But going back now to what you said, kicking off the episode with the code of the week. So let me read out the code, and why don't you guess, Jamie, who said that? Okay, 2025. I start quote here. 2025 will be about model forward applications that reshape all application categories more so than any previous platform shift. Every layer of the application stack will be impacted. It's akin to GUI, internet servers, and cloud native databases all being introduced into the app stack simultaneously. 30 years of change is being compressed into 3 years. Unquote.
Do I get a prize for knowing who that was? Because it sounds like our boss. It's got to be Satya, right?
Yes, absolutely. Satya's favorite theme actually talk about the convergence. So this is actually all about the like he's talking about the how the agentic AI is actually going to change a lot of things. And what happens is this in this agentic capabilities, you have to build agentic applications with memory, entitlements, and action space, and all that, right? And use powerful model capabilities now, to do that, you have to actually bring the UX, UI, you have to bring the agentic actions space, the memory, and all those capabilities together. Now, many times, sometimes these capabilities are actually staggered within like our own ecosystem of Microsoft. So, what Satya announced actually, and he wrote in the corporate blog this week that we are going to form a new group called Core AI, which will actually bring the platforms and the tools together across. For example, it will bring out the tools which are like related to the developer division and the AI platform and some other teams from the our office of CTO, which will include AI supercomputer, agentic runtime, and engineering teams. And bringing it together, this group will be formed, and that will actually be charged with creating the capabilities, the converged capabilities, the integrated capabilities, which will be delivered to the customers, right? And this was announced actually officially and publicly. And this will be led by Jay Parekh, who actually was used to be the head of engineering at Meta many years ago, and then he actually became the CEO of this cybersecurity startup company. I'm forgetting the name actually, but Lace Work, yeah, pretty good company, and it is recently acquired just last year, so now he's freed up. He joined Microsoft. He's going to report into Satya directly, and he's going to lead this group. This will essentially bring all the AI capabilities. Everything else remains same. Mustafa Suleiman will continue to do the consumer AI, but actually it reflects on a theme. Okay, this is why it is important. What's happening is this agentic AI is actually changing fundamentally the way the companies will build the capabilities, and which is what in fact Microsoft is doing. Particularly, Satya also actually talked about in one of the podcasts very recently and famously that the essentially there's the SaaS, right? This software as service is nothing just a CRUD database, right? Activity, right? Ultimately, it will all be eaten by the agents, right? Which of course our friend Mark Benioff at Salesforce doesn't like it. Um, he has a different perspective on the agentic world. But I think this is kind of reflecting how the agents will change, how the agents will become ubiquitous, and agents and Microsoft and Satya has actually talked about it, right? I mean, anything can be an agent, right? I mean, the Word, the Excel, these are all just agent in his perspective. So it just reflects how Satya and Microsoft is thinking about it, how they're going to bring all the capabilities together and form this group for AI. How do you like that?
I love it. And I mean, the things that you just mentioned around like how do we define or how are things changing in the way that we contemplate what software as a service is. And when you think about the underlying components of it, things that will help build and bring together data, bring together our application logic, have that interaction with either the user or quote unquote other tools. I think that really changes the game of how we think about applications and how applications are constructed. And the heart of that are the things that we're seeing that Satya mentioned, as well as, and I think you just kind of alluded to a little bit, some of the changes internally within Microsoft to bring those groups together. But it's a fundamental shift in terms of just the concepts around what you need to build this next generation of applications. And again, that application stack is really focused around agents. So it'll be really telling to see how all these things come together over the next, I was going to say years, but in this agentic world or the AI world that we live in, we no longer measure things in years. We measure them basically what seems like minutes, but we measure them in weeks or months at this point. But anyway, yeah, I think it's very very telling in terms of where at least Microsoft is going, and I believe that we're seeing a lot of same similarities, whether or not it's Google or even infrastructure players at this point in terms of Nvidia, really getting on this bandwagon and putting a lot of their emphasis on how to build agents of what it means from an infrastructure application as well as user interaction layer.
Yeah, and one thing I also liked, Jamie, in this blog, the way Satya put this up. He said, in other words, our AI platform and tools will come together to create agents, and these agents will come together to change every SaaS application category. And building custom applications will be driven by software, that is service as software. So software as service is being flipped, now being a service as a software. So funny enough, a good, I would say, a good take on that name and how this application, how this category will be appended.
That's great. Yeah,
We'll
that's a great little flip because then this way I don't have to change any of my architecture diagrams. Still the same acronyms.
just as, yes, absolutely. Okay. All right. So I think, Jamie, are we ready to kick off with our news section of this
Yeah,
episode?
yeah. Let's go for it.
Okay, well, this week has to be full of a lot of political things, of course, because U.S. presidents are going to change hands. So that is also leading to some flurry of executive actions and some very, I would say, anticipated and expected executive actions on the AI as well, right? So, for example, a couple of them we talk about it. President Joe Biden has signed an executive order to accelerate the scale up of AI infrastructure in the US to meet the massive energy and supply needs of the cutting edge technology. As we have talked about in the past as well, that AI can be only limited by certain things. GPUs is one, and we'll talk about that because that is also related. But energy is certainly another one. And Biden, who is like essentially he's with this executive action, it actually asks the federal agencies to actually lease the federal lands, for example, to be used for the energy, like building the plants and essentially increasing the capacity of the energy so that the companies can continue to get those energy and build AI
Yep.
capabilities.
Yeah, and that's super important. And I know that a couple of episodes ago, we talked about Microsoft in partnership to bring back on like 3 Mile Island as an example, because we need a lot of energy to run these AI models. I'll just give one little interesting tidbit of information, and I look at it this way. This relates back to this executive order and needing infrastructure. That's also going to turn into more jobs over the holiday break at a couple of different parties celebrating the holidays. And we were chatting with somebody who had just retired a couple of years ago from the nuclear energy field, and he was brought back to work back on 3 Mile Island. So this whole notion of being able to create the need for energy around AI, that also means that it's going to stimulate economy and bring additional jobs, or at least sink in more money to bring up either existing plants, new plants, or any way that we need it. So, this kind of ties back into this executive order, but it really made it real for me when, I found out that, someone that was retired is going back into the field because they actually need that experience to work on, in this case, at least the Microsoft plant. So, in my head, this is a great thing. Anything that we could do in the United States to keep our expertise, keep our ability to execute, and in order to do that, we need electricity. Bottom line.
Yeah, and this is actually interesting, Jamie, because a lot of countries are actually looking to build the energy capabilities to meet the growing demand through actually nuclear energy. I remember there was actually a massive deal done between US and India for the nuclear cooperation, building a lot of power plants in India. Like India is hungry for the energy needs, right? Growing fast. Um, Interestingly enough, however, nuclear was not a preferred option within US, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like had taken a backstage, and there were always other means, and there were hydro plants, and I think thermal plants, etc. Those were actually taking the front seat actually on the energy scene. And now suddenly, however, when you need the energy at such a fast rate of the growing demand, nuclear seems to be the only option because it can be put up quickly. So I think that is important within US. It's kind of changing the landscape of the energy, how this will be generated.
Yeah, totally. It's the more that we need AI, the more electricity we need to run those computers to do the training, the inference, and everything in between.
Yeah, I hope they don't redirect our residential energy, Jamie, and we don't live in the outages to build the AI. I hope that we can find that balance.
I've got my whole house generator. I'm good.
Okay. And by the way, there was a meme actually going on. There was some, it was of course fake. Some people were actually gullible enough though. Enron egg. That there was a like an meme going on that okay, there's a video, like a fake ad that okay, Enron egg. You can carry your power with just one that little device. So it will power your home for 10 years and all that kind of thing, and you can carry it around and things like that. um, To be honest, initially I thought, oh wow, that's really good. Later on, I discovered no, 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 that's just fake. It was just I thought, oh, oh, that's amazing. I would love to actually have that egg. But yeah, um, continuing on that executive actions on the AI, the another one was where parents commerce department is issuing new semiconductor export rules affecting Nvidia particularly. So what happened is actually, I mean, of course, not just about Nvidia. It's about the GPUs. Of course, Nvidia has 90% of the market, so they get affected immediately. The new regulation, what it does is it actually group the countries into three different categories and placing different export controls. So the first group is really 18 allies to which the GPUs can ship freely. There is no cap. There is no limits, and they can continue to get as much GPUs as they want. And they are like Australia, Belgium, the typical allies of US, and like also in the Pacific, like New Zealand and the Korea, South Korea, of course, and Taiwan and Japan, right in the Asia. The second group is a group which is called the countries of concern, where the exports of the most advanced GPUs will be banned entirely. And this is Hong Kong and Macau and China. It's completely banned, okay, by the way. And of course, the Russia, Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Syria. So that that is actually surprising because there is some export that does happen to China, but it is kind of a dumbed down GPUs. It is not the latest set of GPU capability. What Nvidia had done was they actually created a little bit dumbed down version of the GPUs, and they were actually sending that to China. But now with this will be entirely banned. And then the third categories of the countries would be subject to a cap of 100,000 GPUs. And this will, anything like, if for the larger orders, there will be a verification process. Okay, so, and the business looking to set up large clusters in these countries would need US government approval to do so. And it includes a lot of allies as well, including UAE, and Saudi Arabia, who were also looking to build a lot of capabilities in the with the GPUs, and in fact, they were getting a lot of support so far. It also includes Israel. It also includes many allies. Um, this is essentially the AI and the GPUs is becoming a leverage, to be honest, in the world, right? And of course, we can see that it is becoming so critical that there are executive actions because this is, as I say, right, the AI is weaponized. AI is going to be very important capability.
Yeah, when I look at this on the surface, I say this is good, to have these export rules to, stop bad actors. But the other side of this is that, to me, this will actually spur on development of chips in other markets by those actors, by those players. Obviously, we know that China, has control of some technology arms, and they're building chips currently today. We even see that in some of the models that are being produced by China. I don't know how many people are actually even aware that there's large language models that rival a GPT class model. But anyway, that's on the model. There's going to be companies that are going to be developing maybe not as good as NVIDIA based GPUs, but there will be companies, they already are. So to me, at one point, this is great that we have this, these rules and policies, but at the end of the day, is this really going to stop groups, countries, individuals from doing what they believe they need to advance their own technology pieces? Again, time will tell, but that's just my own personal belief and thoughts. And we'll see how this plays out or pans out.
That is, in fact, exactly what Nvidia is arguing. They're saying that hey, we don't support this because this is not going to work because it's just gonna delay, and it will just um, force other countries to actually look for alternative technologies to actually work. And in fact, which is what China has shown. I mean, they have a lot of companies who are very capable, Huawei and others. They have developed those kind of capabilities and technologies. So it's only going to buy some time, and I think probably maybe that is the intention, right? I mean, buying the time, and maybe for some of the countries it may be just a backbreaker. They will never be able to do anything other, but China certainly can.
Yep.
And we'll see what will
Yeah.
happen.
Yep. Definitely. Speaking of NVIDIA, a next piece of news is NVIDIA's digits. So this was actually announced at the CES show, just whatever it was, a couple of weeks, the Consumer Electronics Show out in Vegas. But NVIDIA announced a personal supercomputer. And yes, I'm already thinking about maybe spending some money on getting one of these things. So what actually is it? So again, it's called Digits. It was announced at CES, as I just mentioned, but this is a compact desktop-sized, basically personal computer that's based upon the Grace Blackwell superchip. It's actually the GB10, and it's capable of handling artificial intelligence models with up to 200 billion parameters. So if you think about like small language models, being able to develop and train, doing the inference on those things, that will be able to run on these personal supercomputers. And you might be thinking, well, how much is this going to cost me? Well, it's not cheap, but it's not super expensive either. Pricing will be starting around $3,000. And I could kind of remember, this might be showing my age a little bit, but my first real computer outside of an Atari 800, I spent $2,400 on that computer.
At
And
that time,
it wasn't anything crazy. I think I might have had like 1 gig of memory and all excited about a 40 gig hard drive. But
is
this
that
thing,
inflation adjusted, Jamie, or is that the price point at that time?
what was that? The
The $2,400.
$2,400, and that was back in like 1992,
Oh
or
wow!
maybe even a little bit earlier than that, maybe like late 80s. So, equate that $2,400 to today's dollars, and it's a lot more. So $3,000 for this supercomputer, basically, that you can go out and buy. It's got 128 gig of unified memory and 4 terabytes of NVMe storage. So, to me, this talking about specifications on hardware is almost like somebody talking about a supercar, with how many horsepower is in the car and all that stuff. So I get, all jazzed up for this. It's got this digits computer, the $3,000. It can deliver up to 1 petaflop of AI performance, making it totally usable for developers, researchers, students, anybody who really wants to, expand the limits of what we could potentially do with AI. And that's exactly where NVIDIA's CEO, that being Jensen Huang, he emphasized that this is all about driving innovation and bringing hardware that would be needed to drive that innovation out to millions of people. And the end result here is this will change the game potentially for, smaller companies, individuals, let's say, doing research in universities to really shape of where we're going with AI. So, like I said, I might not have to. I'm trying to maybe not tell the wife I'm going to go out and buy a 3,000 supercomputer. I'll just keep it underneath my desk, but it might be on my wish list for my birthday coming up. So
Will it fit in my office? How big is this, Jamie?
it's not that big. It's basically like a personal computer, like just your average desktop.
Ah,
Obviously, it comes.
I don't need a personal data center for this. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. You could literally you can put it in the back of the room that you're in now. So yeah, obviously it's doesn't come with monitors or anything like that. It's just the
Just a company.
desktop basically.
Mhm.
So on other news, we've got Apple Intelligence. Again, I have it. I've been running it. I actually just got a new iPad Air, and that's on there as well. But Apple, as they continue to either be late to the game and or have some miscues, there's some stumblings that they had with portions of the Apple Intelligence, specifically their AI news summaries. This is just a couple days ago. I'm sure that they're going to be fixing this, but Apple had disabled summaries for news, and this affects iPhones, iPads, and Macs. And this all came out because the BBC highlighted that Apple's AI system twisted some news notifications and displayed inaccurate facts. That's obviously not something that you want your flagship product for AI to be doing. So, this is just one of the many things that, as I mentioned before, was the stumbling block for Apple. They keep on, facing challenges, everything from rolling out their technology, which certainly has been scrutinized by many people in terms of its capabilities, kind of late to the market or late to the game. So this is just another one of those thorns in the proverbial side of what Apple is doing. Now, do I personally think that they're going to get over this? Yeah, and I'm sure that there's going to be a fix rolled out, shortly. I actually might have even gotten it now because I just noticed that they pushed out an update to me last night that I have to actually install because I am on the beta side for these Apple Intelligence updates. So could be within the update they already have, but again, just another stumbling block on the Apple side.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think with the speed at which things are emerging, I think these are like minor glitches. I would say Google has gone through several. Every company has gone through a little bit. Um, I'm sure that they will overcome this one.
Yeah, I do too. And like I said, they might have actually overcome it already. It's more or less it's not about the technology; it's about the bad press that I would say.
That's true. Um, okay, next one. Microsoft and Google. So this is actually interesting aspect of how do you make money? Not just how do you make AI, but how do you make money off AI? So different companies are trying different things, right? I mean, it's a common thing to have the plans like Pro and Plus and those kind of plans which every company has, Perplexity or ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot. They all have the plans like that, right? But what's I think happening is, Jamie, that just like I would say electric vehicle, for example, right? There is a certain demographic who's very comfortable, who's always pioneer. They want to try the new things, and they went up with the electric vehicle very quickly. But now it's kind of plateaued, right? I mean, there is another section which really doesn't take an action until they are really forced to. So similarly, the same way the AI is also happening. So, for example, Google has a workplace suite, right? And what they do is just like the Microsoft Office, in which you can get, of course, all these workplace productivity apps like Words, Excel, and bunch of other things in that suite. Similarly, Google has a workplace, and they provide like Meet and Sheet and all those kind of workplace productivity suite. Now they then provided a add-on for the with the Gemini, which was like it would be charged like $20 to $30 per employee per month, right? In the range of similar to that Copilot pricing. And I think they probably realize that this doesn't scale beyond a certain thing. So what they do is now they announce that they're gonna actually include it the AI as a default. It's not no more an add-on. It's a default inclusion in this workplace suite. But the workplace suite will be actually charged $2 per employee per month more, which is like a 16% increase over the previous bundle. Now, what happens is this, right? It kind of forces people to that, okay, now they have the feature, but enterprises are not going to be too happy because they will say, hey, I don't, my employees are not even using it. So why would I even pay that additional $2? But on the other hand, rather than paying $20 to $30 per employee per month, now you're paying only $2 for those whose users. So it's kind of a balance. It's like nudging the enterprises and their employees to actually use it more. On the other hand, it also brings a scale to that AI revenue, right? Which was earlier getting kind of plateaued at certain level. So and this is actually also not something entirely new. Microsoft did that as well. So Microsoft actually had, of course, this Office 365 productivity apps. What they did is last year they actually in the Southeast Asia and Australia and that geography, they actually prototyped it where they included the Copilot AI in the Office itself, and the price went up like 45%. Essentially, the price was like, I think, from 6.99 it went to actually 9.99 for that particular subscription. And that kind of again bring that scale potential, because now more people can actually use it. It is no more a choice, because after a certain time the new customers will have no more choice, they will have to actually go with the same plan. The existing customer, I think they had some like a runway to which actually they can switch back and forth with the classic, which is what is happening. So Microsoft has also done the similar thing this week as well. This new Copilot is now available with the 365 bundle in the expanded overseas market, and it actually provides the AI credits in that suite. So what happens is, for example, in the Microsoft 365 bundle, the subscription owner, let's say if you have a family plan, subscription owner can actually get some AI credit and they can use it. Unfortunately, it is not extended to the family members. And then if you want more, then you can actually subscribe to Copilot Pro. So you get certain basic, and then you also get, if you want more, then you can get essentially a Copilot Pro, which is an add-on and extra cost as well.
Yeah. I break this down in my head. It's about perception for individuals and for companies. Like, and what that really means is that people want these capabilities, but they don't want to feel like they need to put a bolt on to provide that capability and pay more for it. So again, perception. If you raise the price and include it and it's just part of the package, people don't feel like, oh, I got to go out and buy something else to get this thing, where this thing is now AI. So um, and also it goes back to what you said. Companies need to make money, not as much adoption maybe in terms of uptake on this extra thing. Probably wasn't hitting the mark in terms of targets. So I think this is a smart move by the companies. Um, there's actually the opportunity here to have more revenue. Again, you need that revenue because that has to offset the cost of actually running these AI components. But again, perception, you're still paying for it as a company, as a user. It's just now it's included within the cost that you're paying for that base service. However, that base service just went up in cost. So again, perception.
Yeah, and I think these kind of changes, Jamie, this really works very well for the companies who are like pioneers, who has a very AI savvy culture, and a lot of their employees are actually using these things, right? So, for example, if they're using these kind of plans and they had to buy the add-on, for them it works really well because they now actually pay lower and everybody gets that capabilities, right? So they
Yeah.
can extend it. On the other hand, for the companies who were not really AI savvy, it actually kind of forces them, hey, wake up and use those features. And it's kind of like giving them the taste, because now if you are paying for it anyway, you better use it, and if you do it, you will start liking it. To be honest, who will not like the, for example, in the Teams, who will not like the feature of recording the meetings and getting the AI notes and actions? I'm hooked, right? I mean, I don't no more take the notes. I just plead to
Right.
everybody, hey, let's please record it so Copilot can take the notes.
Exactly. It's like to us, yeah, to us, that's like table stakes these days. And if you take that away from me, you'd be like, no, you don't do that. So
Exactly.
yeah, if you expose that to people, they're going to be like, how did I live without this? It's almost like, how'd you live without the fax machine or email or a cell phone? It's kind of the same idea. I think it's a great move from a exposing more of the AI capabilities to the masses.
Absolutely, and I think we will see more of this. To be honest, in 2025 as well, because the more and more agents will come. So remember, Salesforce has also a model where actually they charge, I think, $2 flat for everything that you ask an agent, and they have already a lot of agents at the work, and you charge $2, right? So which could be a small number, to be honest, if you're using that capability. But of course, it can sometimes become a problem if companies are not governing it, right? Or at least if they don't have an observability on this, because otherwise employees can go just wild and use them a lot, and the cost can escalate very quickly. And similarly, however, I think so agentic, we will have to see how that commercial will, but looks like the Salesforce model where they're charging. Microsoft is also following the suite for this in the same way, that it will be based on that. Okay, if you use the agent capable like Copilot agents, which are available, if you use them, that will be also kind of a flat fee if they're using the AI capabilities. So we will see. This is a start. We will see where it will end.
Yep.
All right. The next section, launches. Of course, a lot of launches continue to happen. There was, I would say, a little bit still, people are still taking a little bit break, and it was a bit slow comparatively. But even the slow means still there's tons of things going on. So starting with OpenAI, ChatGPT now lets you schedule reminders and recurring tasks. Now, this may sound very, very easy. Hey, what's that? Like my reminder application on the iPhone actually does that. Well, that's true. A lot of people do that. A lot of applications do that already. However, that is exactly the difference. That they do that kind of in an RPA mode, right? All you have done is just automated that. Okay, send me just a rule-based automation. But this is a bedrock to create the agentic capabilities, which is what OpenAI is really testing. So, of course, unofficially they don't say that, but this is like a new beta feature. It's called Task, and it is already rolled out to the ChatGPT Plus team and pro users. You and I both have the access to it. We played with it. I love it because it just helps you schedule the notifications. You can do set up, like for example, I set up a simple one is like, okay, give me the summary of AI news every day, right, in the morning. But I also set up something like, okay, tell me if the air quality indicator in my region, my local area goes too low. Okay, and it did set up it. So what it's gonna do is every 1 hour it's gonna actually look for the air quality indicator and let me know what that happens.
Yeah, and so here's my thought on this. So you kind of already indicated, we have reminders, we've got things like that. Certainly, you could do a reminder type task with this technology. And funny thing is, where you mentioned about summarize and provide me the AI news, I did that as well. I'll show people what this looks like in a minute, but I think there's so much more that is potentially capable, even with what we have today with these tasks, that I don't believe OpenAI did service to what they put out. I don't know if that was intentional. I don't know if maybe they just ran a bad marketing campaign around this. And to be honest with you, I'm not even sure why this wasn't put within the ship miss days last month in December. Maybe it wasn't ready yet. But my view on this is that the tasks or this capability actually may rival, maybe some of the other capabilities that were rolled out in Chipmas. And here's why. While yes, you could do simple things like, summarize the last day's worth of AI news, I think that misses the point in the sense that I can create tasks that leverage a lot of data and information that you already have. Now, how you feed it in to that task or that chat, I can do it as simple as just fill up the context window. And again, remember that these things have a higher context window as far as 128,000 tokens. So I could put a lot of information in and then say create this task based upon the information that to have something that's more rooted than in business. So yes, while this is cute and gimmicky for doing things like AI news, maybe it's a little bit more than cute and gimmicky doing air quality, but it's still, how does that relate to business? I think if businesses think about this as it relates to how can I inject context that would be relevant for my business, that's super useful. The other thing that I have not seen too many people, if anybody at all, talk about is the ability to basically daisy chain these tasks. So what if and I'll give a simple example, what if I have, a task that goes out to do the AI news, right? But after it gets that news, maybe I have another task that says, all right, take that output and create create a formatted Word doc that I could use for a podcast. Good thought, right? Since we're doing AI podcasts.
Hmm.
So that simple one just takes two different tasks, but the output of one is the input of another. Well, again, I think you mentioned that, or maybe you haven't just yet, but you're limited to 10 different tasks within your whole account. So you're going to be somewhat limited because you can only daisy chain 10 of them. But I would assume over time, maybe even with the ChatGPT Pro plan, which is that $200 plan, maybe they're going to allow you to do 100 tasks. So once I start to really break these things out and think about the power of what they could be potentially, and if there's a cap limit raised or released on the number of tasks, I think this is maybe a little bit more powerful than what seems like on the surface for what this thing could do. So
That's true. I mean, I think, and that is a really good point that you made, Jamie. That because this is not publicized at all. There's daisy chaining these different tasks. And of course, it is a building block for the more agentic capability that we anticipate from OpenAI. But this is not publicized at all, and I'm
right.
sure that they just telling they don't want to spook maybe people
Yeah.
probably, and that is why they're playing low. Hey, it's a simple thing, just a task. But that is an amazing discovery, Jamie. Are you planning to show something on that?
Yeah. So not to the level of doing the daisy chain yet, but you could easily see how it could be done. All right. So just a little context. I'm in my GPT Plus account. I'm maybe a little bit. I'll put it this way: the way that they uncovered the tasks, I'm not sure if I agree this is how I would have designed it. But again, I'm not an engineer at OpenAI, but if you're familiar with this, you pick what model that you want. So the model that you're going to pick is the GPT-4o model with scheduled tasks. So it's not like you have, oh, here's my model, any model, and then I'm going to do tasks. They're kind of intertwined together. All right. So I pick the GPT-4o with tasks. Now you could see I did this literally just a day or two ago, but I said, well, how do you, I guess maybe the first thing I'll say is, how do you create a task? You actually tell the GPT interface that you want to create a task. So I basically am saying, go create a task, and you can see this one that will run each morning at 9 a.m. And tell me the weather for Lewis, Delaware, which is where I live. So it creates this task thing. So I could look at it and I could edit it. Literally, there's, you give it a name, you give it some instructions, tell me the weather for Lewis, Delaware, when you're going to run this thing. I could obviously delete it or pause it. So, on the surface, it doesn't look like much, right? But again, you know, in this instruction set, I can get pretty verbose of the things that I want to do. All right. So you set that up, and then it's basically lives inside of the GPT or lives inside of the OpenAI world. I created another one, which is summarize the AI news. You can see the same thing. This is why I said, hey, tell me the summarization of the news the last 24 hours. What happens is this thing is then running or waiting to run in the OpenAI world. And this is what it did. So it generated it this morning. Like I said, actually, I set this up last night. So it's telling me the AI news from the last 24 hours, gives me whatever information where it picked it up as far as news outlets, gives me all the sources. So all the things I'm used to in terms of what how I want to work with the output. And then here's that weather for Lewis, where I live. So pretty simplistic, at the surface. But like I said, you could daisy chain. So I could create something that says, all right, take output from the check Lewis weather, and that'll know that it's a task. And then create a podcast information, whatever it may be, for listeners. So it'll go off and then create a next task on that. And this is why I said you could start to daisy chain these things and get more complicated. Obviously, I would do a lot more with that afterwards. Now, there's two other things I want to talk about here. So with this, I could jump to my tasks. So this will show me all of the tasks. I obviously didn't build that next one yet, but here's the task that I have currently right now. Again, remember, you're limited to 10. I could have, at least here's a list, and I could jump back in and edit those tasks that I need. One last thing is these tasks, yes, they show up in this list, right? But you could also customize where you want your tasks to show up, and that's under the notifications. So I could tell it, push it, or send me an email so I can get notifications of that. So I actually do have an email that I have, and again, it sends it to whatever account that you're running this under, but I have an email that said, hey, you just got the weather task updated. All it does is it says click here, and it takes you back into this ChatGPT environment. So that is basically what Tasks is right now at the moment.
Amazing. I think that was a pretty good demo, Jamie. I love that daisy chaining. We it's like those hidden features in the video games.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I've just uncovered a new nugget or a cheat code to go through.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Fun world. We will try a lot of things with the task. What else, Jamie?
Yeah. So next up is really talking about some new information from Nvidia. So we talked about the digits, but that's not that they all, or that's not the end of the things that they had at CES. So or the Consumer Electronics Show. So Nvidia not only does hardware, and I'm not sure how many people really know this, but they also have a family of models or large language models. So they released two things, and again, this all focuses around agents um, or quasi agents. But so they have a family of models called Nemotron, and this is really to, at least what they just released, is really to advance the agentic AI. And it's a partnership with Meta. So they took their Llama models, and so it's built with those foundational Llama model, and they optimize it for creating agents. So think about it in terms of like what would be the typical applications. It could be like application customer support or fraud detection. So these models excel in those levels of instruction that are going to be needed for code and math. So they also introduced other models within that whole Nemotron, and it was around vision language models. And these really enable those agents to analyze and respond to image and videos. Again, think about it where it might be in the use cases of healthcare and retail, as well as autonomous machines. Think of like driving cars or robotics. So what was really introduced were these three models focused around the agent development, and they come in three different forms: nano, super, and ultra. Basically, again, aligning with the small, medium, and large models itself. So enterprises can take advantage of these models and align it to whatever use cases that would be there. And again, it's focused on open source, aligned with agentic. Now, here's where the real excitement, at least in my opinion, and where NVIDIA is pushing the envelope. Not only did they release these models that are tuned for running agents, but they also released what they call AI blueprints. So these AI blueprints are really designed to automate the building of AI agents. And again, it covers things like reasoning, planning, and be able to take action. So these agents, or this blueprints, allows customers that are working with the NVIDIA stack, whether or not it's their enterprise software, their NIM microservice, and those Nemo models, to create agents. So they're laying this groundwork for an infrastructure and software platform for agents, and all at the same time taking these blueprints. So you could literally go out to the Nvidia site, pick up the blueprint that works with these Nemotron models, and have a functioning agent around a use case. And again, example there is everyone probably has seen. I know we talked about the notebook LM from Google. They actually put out a blueprint for building your podcast um, based upon documents, and built an agent around that. So this is why I say it's not only the design and architecture and code that's needed to build agents, but they also put out blueprints. So what's also important, at least from my perspective, is that they're working alongside of other providers in the AI agentic world, things like CoreAI, the LangChain, as well as then weights and biases as it relates to models. So interesting to see that NVIDIA is really pushing into a place where it's more than just chip making. It's actually, the full stack of software and tools and models to help with building this agentic world.
This is such an interesting area and topic, Jamie, because for NVIDIA, this is a very delicate balance because they are, of course, supplier of the GPUs, which the other companies are using to develop and run those capabilities right on the AI. On the other hand, if NVIDIA goes too far and becomes like a model provider, what does that make them? It
Right.
is no more supplier, it becomes a competition, right? And that's why I think Nvidia is playing low on this one. They're not, their models are actually pretty good.
Yeah.
They have performed well in a lot of benchmarks, but I think they're deliberately playing it low and not spooking all their customers and make them a competition. So pretty delicate balance for them.
Yeah. I think you nailed it, because they're going into the realm of co-opetition. So they're pushing the envelope of what these models can do, but they're really not, at least in my opinion, they're not touting it as much as they potentially could be.
Yeah, perfect. What else? A lot of agentic stuff, Jamie. This is a year of the agent, I think.
Yeah, I think 2025 should be relabeled, like you just said, the year of agents. So as we look at Azure and Microsoft, let's talk about the things that have transpired over the last couple of weeks. So first one is really around the Foundry agent service. Just to remind people, I'll bring up a slide or two. Microsoft at its Ignite conference back in November released a lot of announcements, and we covered a lot of that in one of our episodes. But one of those things was the notion of Microsoft AI Foundry. Foundry is a cornerstone of how AI based applications, whether or not it's agentic based or not, can be built. Part of that puzzle was an agentic AI service. So it was announced at Ignite, but it wasn't actually published. So unless you were one of the fortunate companies that were um, part of the private preview, you wouldn't been able to get it. Let me go back a step. So what was released back in the middle of December, and this is why I said I'm not sure if too many people really caught it, was Microsoft did put out in public preview, which means everybody can use this now. They put out the software development kit for the Azure AI agent service. What this allows people to do is to build agents based upon that Foundry platform. What does that actually mean? Well, it means that there is now a full-fledged agent service. That agent service is based upon the OpenAI Assistance API. So if our listeners have used the Assistance API, you know that this was the first foray, if you will, into this agentic world by OpenAI. It allowed you to define tools, which, again, based upon plugins, functions, allowed you to bring in the code interpreter, which again is this Python engine that can execute and run code. That was, that's been out for what, more than a year. So what the Azure AI Foundry AI agent service does is it adds on top of that, it adds the ability to use other large language, small language models more than just the open AI models, that being GPT-4, 4.0 class models. So I can use models from Llama, from Mistral, from Cohere, and many others. What it also does is it opens up the ecosystem of tools. So there's a lot of capability, obviously, already created by many organizations in terms of logic, applications, as well as different systems that have already been constructed. So this ecosystems of tools allows these agents to leverage those capabilities, leverage those objects, and take actionable insights on that. So these are going to be things like being able to run Azure functions. And again, this is where I could build business logic within, any myriad of languages or coding languages that I want. So I can call that function from that agent. I can call logic apps. And again, logic apps are part of the Power Platform where they have Logic apps has over 1,400 connectors to different tools, systems, data stores. Great example there is things like SAP or ServiceNow. So these agents can connect into that wide set of tools that are very easily now constructed through something like that visual environment for building process through the logic apps. If that wasn't enough, the notion of knowledge, again, you need to work against some data. So where do you get that data? Well, the Azure AI agent service allows you to connect into things like Microsoft Fabric, SharePoint sites. You can connect into vector store indexes that are created by Azure AI Search. You could bring in your own data and even license data to be used by these agents. And last but not least, these agents can be grounded with real-time data through the Bing search. So on top of all that, obviously there's the enterprise readiness things in terms of like observability, locking down, and from a security standpoint. So all those things are built in, which again is not there with just the assistance API. So all these things together is what this agent service SDK is. And as I kind of just alluded to it, you think about this lineage between, all right, we all started out with chat completions API, it's being able to do chat. And then we have this assistance API, but all the things I just mentioned, like being able to do, hey, I could execute a code interpreter, I could do function calling. The main thing, by the way, through an agent is there needs to be some memory. Agents need to act upon messages. So there's a different construct that is introduced with the assistance API through what is called threads and messages. So that is inherent within the underlying structure of the agent service through the Azure AI Foundry agent service SDK. But as I mentioned, we build upon, or Microsoft builds upon, all of those different functions to bring additional capabilities. I inevitably do get the question, like, how does the agent service differ from AutoGen? So if you're not familiar, AutoGen is an output from the Microsoft Research Labs, and it's really to help orchestrate multiple agents together, whereas the agent service is to build the singular agent. So it's all about orchestration. That's what AutoGen is. There's an offshoot of AutoGen called Magentic One, which is basically just the newer capabilities of building that orchestration. But here's the kicker. AutoGen is, yes, it's meant for orchestration for multiple agents, but it's not meant for production use. This is where you want to look at other tooling from Microsoft or other orchestration engines out there, something like Semantic Kernel from Microsoft to help with the orchestration of a multi-agent or a multi-agentic application that you're building. So again, the Azure AI agent service is literally just meant to build a singular agent, not it's not a multi-agentic system. Basically, you just think about building like 5, 10, whatever agents that you want through the agent service. And then you got to stitch that together somewhere else. So with that, let me show you something real quick. I don't know if you've got any thoughts while I bring this up, Shadab, but I'll get into how this actually looks.
It is. It is. I think one of the key thing that this the SDK etc. that unlock is that people who are not core user of Azure, they can now actually use these SDKs outside the Azure, preferring their own tools and languages to actually build the capabilities. I think it brings an additional set of enterprises and users to also be able to make use of this, even if they are not heavy Azure users currently.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm about to show is very developer oriented. Again, the reason why I mentioned that or want to mention it right now is this SDK is just that. It's a software development kit. It's meant for, I'm showing you right now, Visual Studio Code to build an agent. I'll say this, and maybe by the time some people listen to this, it may already be out, but we're also, or Microsoft is also building a user interface inside of the Foundry Studio. So everything I'm about to show you about instantiating or building an agent is also going to be capable through the IDE, which again is Azure AI Foundry Studio. And that's going to make it so much easier for people because I'm not a developer. I just, pretend to be one. So I know enough how to build things, but for people like me who would rather live through an IDE, that is forthcoming. It should be available, if not by the end of January, which is pretty close. It'll be available within like the first week of February. So we're only talking weeks away. But for now, if you're building things with agents through this Microsoft Agentic AI SDK, this is what you're going to be doing. So the first thing is you have to do a bunch of imports. What is new or what's different? The first thing is I'm working through Python here. So you actually have to do an install or a pip install of the Azure AI projects. This is where this thing lives. When I look at these projects, I'll kind of zoom in a little bit here for you. When I and I have to import the AI project, but I'm also importing other capabilities. And you can see this, the AI project models that comes importing the code interpreter tools. So as I mentioned before, when I went through the slide, there's different tools that could be used by these agents. I am also not worried about showing you my connection string because I'm actually using default Azure credentials to execute this agent. So if I scroll down somewhat, like I said, I'm not going to run through every line of code here, but I've got a connection to a project, and I'm not going to make this a tutorial into the Foundry service, but a project is basically you want to think of it as a container for what I'm going to hold as far as resources or objects against a application. In Foundry, by the way, I could use the Foundry SDK, which is different than the agent SDK, to build these things. But I have a project called AI Basic Project A5WL. I'll explain what that is in it automatically creates projects for you. So we'll put this in the show notes that you can actually do exactly what I'm doing here. So you instantiate a project. You can see that here. I'm creating the project called Project Client. I am then bringing in a tool. In this case, it's the code interpreter. I am then creating an agent. And this is where you give your agent a name. You tell it what model. In this case, I'm using the GPT-4o mini model. The instructions I'm giving in here, not too helpful, but as verbose as you need to as the instructions. And I'm telling it what tools I'm going to be using, which in this case is the code interpreter. So this is probably the most simplistic agent that you'll ever create, because it literally is just using one tool, that being the code interpreter. Then you can see the rest of this. I mentioned about threads. So agents, you want to work with threads, and this is how it members the things that you're actually doing within the agent, or what the agent should work upon. So I've got here the creation of a thread. I'm doing some print so you can see this actually working, and then create a message giving it a prompt. So the message prompt is, could you please create a bar chart for operating profit using the following data? And if I scroll out to the right, data that I'm telling it to use. So basically, like I mentioned, this is a dumb agent, for lack of better terms, because I'm providing it everything, but I really could have this agent go out to, let's say, a data store, like something like Fabric that I mentioned before, to grab its knowledge. But I'm basically just giving this agent some data in line. Now I'm going to tell it to go run this agent with that thread and with that response. And then basically, if you think about what I just told it to do, is create a bar chart. There's no code in here that tells it how to create the bar chart, right? That's the whole concept of the agent. I want the agent to understand my question and then use the tool, which in this case is the code interpreter, to create that chart. So I've run this while we were waiting, so you can see the output. So it created the agent, it created the thread. Sorry, I got to get, I'm trying to zoom in so you can see this thing is a little bit better. It created the message, it created the thread, and then it looked at my response, or my prompt, to go do what it needed to do. And in this case, it actually created this file. Again, you can see this here. It put it into my library, but that file is actually the chart. So here's the chart that this model created automatically for me. This agent created the chart based upon the data. So when we talk about what these agents can do, and again, this is a very simplistic demo of it, but I can have this agent ready and waiting to go, and I could, again, have a multi-agentic system where I have a lead agent, or a broker, if you will, that then orchestrates, hey, let me call my chart building agent. Let me call an agent that's going to do a RAG or retrieval based upon data, and then link those things together through that orchestration engine, which again, something like semantic kernel. So the reality of building agents is there today, again, through code. The ability to do exactly what I just showed you through a user interface, through the Microsoft AI Foundry Studio, is coming shortly. So again, game changer on what I think about in terms of building agents, and this is going to be available for everybody to use now and shortly in a UI. So hopefully that made sense, Shinab, and
Yeah, these will be actually very powerful tool to build the agents, and of course, this is the pro code way of doing things. Developers love it, but that doesn't mean that if you don't know, if somebody who's watching this and say, oh, this is too technical for me, I can't do this stuff, I don't know, man, I'll be left behind on this agentic run. No, that's not true. There will be a tool for everyone. If you don't understand the programming, you don't want to go that way, you will have the tools like Copilot Studio, where you can actually build the agents as well. Of course, you won't be able to do everything, because this is the most powerful way of doing things, but you will still be able to do. There is an agent for everybody to be able to use as well as create.
exactly, yeah. And like I said, I think this is, we're at the beginning stages of agents. Yeah, certainly there's been developments over the last year, but where we're going to go, like if this is the starting point, I can't wait to see what is going to be available by the end of the year, and what Microsoft and other organizations are going to be put out there, because it only gets better from here.
That is true. I think it is not hard to envision that. I think probably by end of the year or middle of the year, or you will have the capability where you just open your Microsoft Copilot, or you open your the ChatGPT plus subscription app and say, hey, just in plain voice, hey, I want to create an agent who does this at this time, and go out to the internet, for example, give me a list of this, or does certain action on my behalf. That's it, and then agent is created. That's how really the future is. It's going to be as easy as that one.
Yeah. And and this is a good segue for the next topic. So we talk about how companies are adapting to what they're hearing from people and organizations, and as we kind of cross over to how organizations are going to use agents, you need a interface to work with an agent, right? So this is where Copilot comes into play.
Mm.
So from Microsoft, there's this notion of, well, how do you use an agent? Well, yeah, we could talk about the more complicated, like autonomous agents that just run in the background and they all interconnect, and eventually we'll get to Skynet, right? Hopefully not. But you have that autonomous agent world. But how do I, as a person, as a user, as an employee, work with an agent that I've set up? Now, we just showed you before, like the OpenAI and tasks. While that's not an agent, at least there's some interface through the Chat GPT interface to work with that task. Well, let's get real as it relates to more sophisticated agents. How are those surfaced up? Well, they're actually surfaced up through Copilot, and specifically with Microsoft, it's something called Microsoft M365 Copilot. That is, or that was a tool and still is a tool for people working and chatting with their data that lives in the Microsoft Graph. But it also was the interface for working and exposing agents. All right. When I say exposing, someone has to build an agent, and then I could use it, see it, or see it and use it. But I could also build agents in that same M365 Copilot world by using sophisticated, simplified, whatever terminology you want to use, agent builder. So sort of like a dumbed down, just give me a UI to help build an agent. Well, the tooling that was capable of doing everything I just said was a paid for service from Microsoft. That's that M365 Copilot. Just this past Wednesday, literally on what was it, January 15th, there was an announcement from Microsoft to bring some of those capabilities to people without having to pay any amount of money. So individuals, organizations, doesn't matter. So the whole notion here is that Copilot, this Copilot chat environment, is really the user interface for artificial intelligence. And when you really think about what that means, it means it's the user interface for agents. So what was really announced? So what was announced, and I kind of just built up the hype to this, is that there is a new branding around what is now being called Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat. This allows individuals to have an interface that allows you to chat with a model, that model being GPT-4o. That model is also grounded by internet searching through Bing. So it's web grounded through Bing itself. Put this another way, if you think about what the Chat GPT interface is, well, Microsoft has just released an interface that's available to everybody that has that same sophistication. Plus, it enables the ability to incorporate agents. So agents are now integrated into that chat experience. So I can use an agent, I can build an agent. Now, there's from an enterprise perspective, if you're building agents, that agent has to run somewhere. So that would be running on something like I just showed you, the Azure Foundry environment. So think about it's just consuming Azure services. But what's important is this is now a user interface for someone or some organizations to run those agents. And from an IT perspective or enterprise perspective, there's controls that are provided for free to look at enterprise data protection as well as then agent management underneath the covers. So this is literally a game changer because it puts the ability to run agents in everyone's hands that is within an organization. So there still is like this M365 Copilot. This is the part that's, as we just talked about, has a price tag associated with it. So if you think about what Copilot Chat, that's that free thing that I just talked about, what the paid version brings is the ability to chat with your own internal enterprise data. So that's why we call it work grounded. It allows you to work with the other applications that now bring in Copilot into that experience, coupled with that grounded information, things like Teams, Outlook, and Word. There's pre-built agents, things like employee self-service or transcribing, automatic transcription inside of Teams while you're working through a meeting, as well as then additional controls. So these are things that I would say are very bring additional value for the extra money that you're paying. And this is a great slide. It really shows some of these differences. So just zooming in a little bit more, like what you get with the free one versus what you get with Copilot or the paid version of that. And a lot of this is really around the integration with your data and, integration with the other productivity tools that are out there as well. And then again, additional enterprise capabilities. So that is, in a nutshell, what is being delivered with the new capability of this Copilot Chat.
So this Copilot chat, and I think this new edition is really uh, chat part was already existing. I think the web and for the enterprise it was work grounded as well. I think the real new capability is really included in the agent. Is that right understanding, Jamie?
Yeah, definitely. It allows the ability to run agents, and that's really the separator. Because as you just said, there was always this, hey, you could just do chat as long as you had, a Microsoft account in some way. You could do chat, and that was with Bing. But this now brings the agentic world into everyone's fingertips. So again, this is really focused in on the business side. If you kind of read between the lines, if you're an organization that's got 100,000 people, maybe you don't want to spend the $30 per person for all 100,000. You could put those more sophisticated capabilities into a subset or a portion of your organization. But now, let's say if you use the 80-20 rule, maybe 20% of your org has the more sophisticated M365 full-fledged version, but maybe 80% of your org now gets this free Copilot Chat. But everybody in your organization has the ability to run agents and use those agents coupled with the Azure services.
Gotcha. Okay. So democratizing agents. That's the theme.
Yes, it's probably the best way of putting it. It democratizes the UI for running these agents.
Okay. Perfect. All right, Jamie. Anything else that you have?
No, that is it. I know we're way over an hour, which we want to thank everybody for. Hopefully you're still around and you got to this point. And, so there's a lot that's coming and we'll see, throughout this year of 2025. So glad to be with everyone again.
Yeah, and this longer episode is just a reflection of a slower week that we talked about. So, but that doesn't mean that we're going to do a 3-hour episode next time when there is more action probably going to happen. But it's just like catching up on some of the other things as well. So good to be back after a break, and everybody have a great time and looking forward to a fantastic 2025.
Catch all. See ya.
Keep listening. Bye bye.